proceeded in the order they occurred. Different parts of the system will always give you different answers to the same question. Shouldn't be. After a system starts receiving updates, you can guarantee that all parts of the system will eventually converge on the same state. Your users will hate you because they won't understand what is happening. What are you talking about? So eventual consistency is at the end, once the system is stabilized and all the updates are finished, there is no difference between those systems. True or false? An eventually consistent system that continues to receive updates can converge on a consistent state. So, but converge means converge, meet together, converge, meet together, because there is a continuous receive updates. There is no chance they can meet at one point, so false. Eventual consistency types. Which of the following are types of eventual consistency? Casual consistency, strong consistency, conditional consistency, sequential consistency, strict consistency. Let's go back and casual consistency. Eventual consistency. State of consistency. You have to stop all updates at least for some period of time in order to reach that level of consistency. Now, we also basic eventual consistency level of eventual consistency models break down into many different forms. Each of those forms have different trade-offs that the basic eventual consistency, which we already defined. We also have casual consistency. This means that casually related items will be proceeded in a common order. So I have eventual consistency, casual consistency, conditional consistency, sequential consistency. We also have a more strict form, which is called sequential consistency. In that case, all items have to be proceeded in a sequential order, regardless of where they are casually related. Now, these do have trade-offs as you go to more strict forms of eventual consistency. You get into different types of trade-offs, like with sequential consistency. If you choose that, you eliminate the ability to parallelize because it requires every event that every event be proceeded in a specific order. You have to complete the first event before you move on to the second event. It means you can't parallelize that at all, and that's a problem, obviously, if you are trying to build something that is really scalable. So each of these different consistency models has different trade-offs, and we have to be aware of that. There's a bunch of other so casual consistency.
The laws of physics put constraints on us when we start building distributed systems. They basically dictate down into many different forms. Each of these forms have different trade-offs. There's the basic eventual consistency, which we've already defined. We also have causal consistency. This means that causally related items will be processed in a common order. For example, if A causes B, then A will always be processed before B. So two things that cause, when one thing causes another, it always has to be processed in that order. We also have a more strict form, which is called sequential consistency. In that case, all items have to be processed in a sequential order, regardless of whether they're caused.
I have three forms of eventual consistency, follow eventual consistency. Strong consistency. 자, 생각. 이게 내가 어떠한 스테러스를 유지를 하고 싶은데 결국에는 casual consistency는 어떤 거냐면 consistency means that casually related items will be presented in a common order. 아무렇게나 여기서 우연히 이거 보면은 여기 업데이트 해야 되네? 업데이트하고 저거 보면은 저거 업데이트 다른 걸로 만나기만 하면 업데이트를 하는 거고, 시퀀셜 업데이트는 차근차근 업데이트를 해나가는 거예요. 근데 eventual consistency에 도달하려면 결국은 strong consistency도, 왜냐하면 이거는 그냥 모든 게 데이터베이스를 하나를 쓰는 거기 때문에 그냥 될 거란 말이지. 근데 아니야. strong consistency는 eventual consistency에 해당하지 않는다. 왜? 아니면 strong consistency는 아예 consistency의 종류가 아닌가? 왜냐하면 consistency를 유지하기 위한 방법으로서 casual consistency하고 sequential consistency가 있는 건데, 그러니까 만약에 이미 consistency를 유지할 수 있는 시스템이 있다면 걔는 다른 방법을 추가할 필요는 없겠지. monolithic architecture. Traditionally, monolithic architectures are based around strong consistency. 그 다음 다시 한번 쭉.
We now find ourselves in a bit of a predicament. We've spent time talking about how the laws of physics force us to live in an eventually consistent world, that when we're dealing with distributed systems, we have no choice but to be eventually consistent. And yet, there are plenty of examples out there of distributed systems that provide strong consistency. So the question then becomes, have we created a contradiction? Are we lying about the state of the world? If we have systems that are distributed and yet are strongly consistent, how is that possible? How can we have that if we've established that the laws of physics prevent it? We're going to answer that question, but the first thing we need to do is we need to understand strong consistency. So we're going to provide a definition. So strong consistency means that an update to a piece of data needs agreement from all nodes before it becomes visible. This is a very simple definition. It's combined out of a number of different definitions. Each of the definitions that we found while building the course were slightly different. Some of them were very technical in nature. We wanted one that you could use to talk about people again, as well as software. So this provides us an opportunity to do that. Now, if we dive into this in a little more detail, what does it really mean? Again, if you think about a group of people instead of a group of hardware nodes, with a group of people, if you want to ask them a question, then in order to have strong consistency, they all have to agree on the answer to that question before they are allowed to present that answer. So you would ask that group of people, they would get together, talk about the answer, and once they have all decided that they know what the answer is, then they will present it. It's a bit like a jury, really. The jury has a job of making a decision. The first thing they need to do is they all need to get together in a room and come to an agreement about that decision before they present it. That's the idea with strong consistency. Now, going back to our original question, how do we have strong consistency if physics tells us that we can't from all nodes before it becomes visible? This is a very simple definition. It's combined out of a number of different definitions. Each of the definitions that we found while building the course were slightly different. Some of them were very technical in nature. We wanted one that you could use to talk about people again, as well as software. So this provides us an opportunity to do that. Now, if we dive into this in a little more detail, what does it really mean? Again, if you think about a group of people instead of a group of hardware nodes, with a group of people, if you want to ask them a question, then in order to have strong consistency, they all have to agree on the answer to that question before they are allowed to present that answer. So you would ask that group of people, they would get together, talk about the answer, and once they have all decided that they know what the answer is, then they will present it. It's a bit like a jury, really. The jury has a job of making a decision. The first thing they need to do is they all need to get together in a room and come to an agreement about that decision before they present it. That's the idea with strong consistency. Now, going back to our original question, how do we have strong consistency if physics tells us that we can't? If in a distributed system, physics says you have to have eventual consistency, then how do we end up with strong consistency? We do it by introducing mechanisms to simulate strong consistency. Locks are an example of this. Now, the key here is that what we are doing is we are taking our distributed problem and we are reducing it to a non-distributed resource, in this case, a lock. You can see that in our little diagram here. The blue boxes represent our distributed system, and then we have a lock in our database. But that lock is not distributed. There is only one copy of that lock anywhere. Because it's not distributed, we can eliminate the distributed system problem. The distributed system problem only exists when you have multiple things that are responsible for the same piece of data. As long as only one thing is responsible for that data, as long as we only have one instance of the lock, it's not a distributed system problem. So this allows us to eliminate the distributed system problem and give us strong consistency in our eventually consistent world. However, there's a cost associated with this, and that's something that we're going to spend a fair amount of time trying to understand. This is not free. When we introduce a lock like this, it introduces overhead in the form of contention. That overhead has consequences to our ability to be elastic, it has consequences to our ability to be resilient, and it has other consequences as well. And so we're going to dive into that in more detail.
Physics prevents strong consistency, so mechanisms are introduced to simulate it. Locks allow the system to simulate strong consistency. Distributed systems are isolated to non-distributed locks. Locks introduce overhead in the form of contention. Contention. Here. Contention. Form of contention.
Lock like this, it introduces overhead in the form of contention. That overhead has consequences to our ability to be elastic, it has consequences to our ability to be resilient, and it has other consequences as well. And so we're going to dive into that in more detail in later parts of this course.
Strong. Copy. Paste. V. You know what? I'd like to paste it here. I don't need to open this page. And if I need to open one page here. Okay. So strong consistency defined.
We now find to be resilient, and it has other consequences as well. And so we're going to dive into that in more detail in later parts of this course.
strong consistency defined means in the absence of new updates, all members of the system will eventually reach the same status. That's the eventual consistency. An update to a piece of data needs agreement for more than one node before it becomes visible. All members of a system must agree on the state before it becomes a majority. Strong consistency in the real world. True or false? Real world analog for strong consistency would be a jury. With a jury, a group of people discuss a question and come to an agreement with the response. It is then the responsibility of the four person, those four men. It is then the responsibility of a foreman or jury leader to convey the decision. A group of people discuss a question and come to an agreement response. So, jury leader convey the decision. Is there any mention about the convey decision? Jury has a job, make a decision. The first thing they need to do is they all need to get together in a room and come to an agreement about the decision before they present it. With a jury, a group of people discuss a question and come to an agreed response. It is then the responsibility of a foreman or jury leader to convey the decision. Convey. 다른 건데 지금 여기서는 the jury has a job of making a decision. The first thing they need to do is they all need to get together in a room and come to an agreement about that decision before they present it. Decision. Patient. 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 Jury has a job of making a decision. The first thing they need to do is that they all need to get together in a room and come to an agreement about that decision before they present it. 그렇지. 맞네. A real world alone for strong consistency would be a jury. With a jury, a group of people discuss a question and come to an agreed response. It is then the responsibility of a four-person or jury leader to convey the decision. Sure. Took time. Blocks enable strong consistency by ensuring that only authorized representatives can read or write the data, um, uh, guaranteeing that only one request for that and for data can happen at a time allowed. Writers by only one reader trying to distribute the problem to a non-distributed resource. Consequence of locking. Locks introduce a problem in the form of contention. Contention은 대화라고 했지? 하나 더 하고
We've been talking up to this point about the cost of strong consistency in a distributed system. Now, again, I've mentioned this before, but anytime I talk about distributed systems, I like to think about things in terms of people and how this impacts people, because people are a natural distributed system. So one of the things that we're going to do in this exercise is we're going to have a look at the impact on the people within the reactive barbecue when we make choices about consistency, whether it's strong consistency or eventual consistency. So we're going to have a look at different scenarios in the restaurant, what type of consistency those scenarios are looking for, and then what the consequences are to the other people in the restaurant and to the other parts of the business. And then we're going to use that to kind of drive forward the conversation around consistency and its importance in a distributed system.
이게 고파일이라서 저게 에러가 난 거구나. 그러면 이거를 바꾸자.
we've been talking up to this point about the cost of strong consistency in a distributed system. Now, again, I've mentioned this before, but anytime I talk about distributed systems, I like to think about things in terms of people and how this impacts people, because people are a natural distributed system. So one of the things that we're going to do in this exercise is we're going to have a look at the impact on the people within the reactive barbecue when we make choices about consistency, whether it's strong consistency or eventual consistency. So we're going to have a look at different scenarios in the restaurant, what type of consistency those scenarios are looking for, and then what the consequences are to the other people in the restaurant and to the other parts of the business. And then we're going to use that to kind of drive forward the conversation around consistency and its importance in a distributed system.
Locking an order in the legacy reactive barbecue order system. When a server wants to edit an order, they do so by opening that order. Once the order is open on their screen, a lock is placed on that order. While that lock is in place, order servers are forbidden from working with that order. They will be unable to make changes or view the order until the lock is released. The lock is released once the server who owns that lock is finished making updates and have saved the order. The case outlined here represents which of the following: eventual consistency, strong consistency. In this situation, which of the following tasks will another staff member be able to complete while the lock is in place? Add a drink to the order, check the contents of the order to determine that what needs to be prepared. First, add a drink to the order is impossible because the order is locked. Check the contents of the order. Because it's locked, I cannot read it. Assist the customer in paying for the order. No, I cannot update the state of the order. All of the above, none of the above. Unlocking the order. For the new order system, the reactive barbecues team has decided to take a different approach. Rather than unlocking an order, they will allow servers to edit orders simultaneously. Each server will be able to add or remove items from an order whenever they want. This will be handled by allowing each item to be added to an order and then finalized. Until an item has been finalized, it won't be sent to the kitchen to be cooked. This allows the items to be added or removed without risk of them being cooked or too early. Each server will have their own view of the order. The system will periodically update that view or the changes that have been made by other servers. The scenario is an example of yeah. One more time. For the new order system, the reagent have decided to take a different approach. Rather than blocking an order, they will allow servers to edit orders simultaneously. Each server will be able to add or remove items from an order whenever they want. This will handle by allowing each item to be added to an order and then finalized. Until an item has been finalized, it won't be sent to the kitchen. So only once it is finalized, it will be sent to the kitchen. So this is eventual consistency. This new step setup contains some risks. They include which of the following: a server has realized that they forgot to add a discount to an item. The customer is now paying for another. They quickly add the discount, but it doesn't show up in time, and the customer ends up paying too much. One server may attempt to remove an item while another is finalizing. The result of this will be highly dependent on timing. The item may get prepared or it may get removed. Two servers may each be requested to add an item to the menu by an impatient customer. They may not see each other's updates, so the item may be added and prepared twice. All of the above. Dirty reads. The legacy system used a similar technique for locking reservations. However, it was decided that in many cases it would be acceptable to avoid the lock by performing a dirty read. In this case, when the host of the restaurant decided to access the list of reservations for their restaurant, the system could read for a database replica instead of the master. Because the system is reading from a replica, it is possible possible that someone is in the process of changing the data of the master, or they may have recently completed a change. Those changes would not show up in the dirty read. However, for the purpose of listing the reservations in the restaurant, that guarantees generally wouldn't pose a problem. Eventual consistency. In the dirty read scenario, the lag of the replicas is generally less than 5 minutes. Given that the lag in is less than the 5 minutes, which of the following situation could arise? A customer creates a reservation a few days before, an hour before the reservation. They changed the number of guests, reducing it from 6 to 4 due to the dirty read. The customer is assigned to a table of 6 instead of the desired 4, which leaves 2 empty seats. A customer created a reservation at home, then drove to the restaurant only to find their reservation is not found by the dirty read. A customer canceled a reservation moments before the scheduled time due to the dirty read. The cancellation is not seen, and a table remains empty when it could have been filled. 상담 살펴볼까? 자, 오늘은 결국에는 속도의 경쟁인데 지금 내가 여기 지금 22일 쓴 사항들이 있고, 만약 오늘이 토요일, 일요일 이틀 동안 저거를 끝낼 수 있다면 자, 그렇게 된다면 정말 좋겠네요. 13일 13일, 19일, 22일, 25일 원래 목표는 19일날 끝내기로 했으나 쉽지 않았고요. 일단 지금 이 세팅 너무 좋아. 문제는 나는 회사를 가면 이 세팅을 가져가지 못하는 그 부분이 있어서 아쉬운 감이 있긴 한데 글쎄 아무튼 집에서 사용하기 지금 이 세팅 나무 같겠죠. 일을 17일까지 끝내고 중간에 페이지 그 다음에 오케이 일단 여기까지 하고 그럼 지금 몇 시간 하는 거지? 여기까지 했으니까 생각보다 많네. 뭐 셋, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 10, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. House. 지금 여덟 개. A solar thought. The father said, fine. Fauci told her, he'll talk tonight.